Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod, the presidential debate date and the terms that make all the difference, pollster Frank Luntz on the rules to make or break a winner, and the high stakes for Biden and for Trump.
And in the end, there's only 7 states that matter. In the end, there's only 4% of Americans that are undecided. So you're going to have these titans ripping each other apart for 1% of America.
How to appeal to voters with loans or crypto. Plus, the candidate who did not make the debate stage is taking the X stage. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. rallying retail traders.
You give RFK Jr.'s campaign credit for is just identifying these hives of belief.
And driving along in our really old automobiles. Phil LeBeau on the aging car fleet.
Almost 9% of all the vehicles registered in the U.S., almost 9%, were built before 2000. Gives you a sense of how long people are keeping their vehicles.
Those stories today, plus tapping the federal gasoline reserve. And pants are hard.
It's happening to men too, by the way.
Really?
Men are wearing these broader pants, almost with like the boot cut.
It's Wednesday, May 22nd. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue her, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Pod right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Mike Santoli. Joe is off today, and Andrew is reporting live from Paris. Andrew, tell us what you're doing there. What do you have coming up?
Well, we are now 65 days, I should say. Yesterday was 66 days when I saw you from the Olympic Games. We're live in Paris this morning at Viva Tech, which is the largest gathering of technology and AI executives all here in Paris. And we have a whole number of them from Meta and OpenAI and the CEO of Baidu. I ran into Eric Schmidt last night at the Elysee and so many others, startups. It's almost a little bit like the French version of CES, or for those who may remember, something called Comdex back in the day in the late 90s. It's just a whole smattering of technology companies, not just from Europe and France, but frankly from around the world. And there's a whole number of conversations that we're going to be bringing you throughout the next day and a half. I should also mention that Elon Musk has just been added to the program, so we're going to be hearing from Elon Musk tomorrow. In addition to a number of interviews today, I'll be speaking with Dario Amodei, who runs Anthropic, who just made a major announcement, a breakthrough in the science of AI and being able, for a long time, Becky, we've talked about AI being a black box. And so many of the folks who even work on this have said they don't understand it. They can't see inside the box. Well, this new research that they've developed actually can see inside the box to really understand what AI is doing. And that way, over time, hopefully, not only will it make it safer, but it'll be able to allow people to actually be able to see the differences and the distinctions between what one model does and another model does. Up until now, that has been almost impossible. And we'll talk a lot about that later this afternoon. But that's what I'm doing here in Paris, and we've got a lot more throughout the day.
Andrew, just in terms of being able to see what it does, how deeply will they be able to track that stuff? Because some of the things with AI, these imaginations that the AI can cook up at times, can they track that down and find out why it's seeing the ghost things that are there?
That's exactly what this research seems to suggest that they're going to be able to do. They're going to be able to understand hallucinations, why the models are hallucinating, in hopes, frankly, that will help them make those models better. But it will also be able to explain why one model may write one sentence and another model may write another sentence, and what is effectively driving some of the different understandings and of the information that it's taken in. And so it's a really very interesting new development, and we'll talk to Dario about it.
I guess you can think of it as a CAT scan or an MRI or something, showing you what's really going on in the brain. It's kind of interesting. Why don't we get
it? Less, by the way, less for us and more for the people for the scientists to see. I don't think that we're going to be able to understand.
To know what we'd be reading.
The MRI
right.
ourselves.
To get well, I couldn't read an MRI either, so maybe it tells you a little bit like that. And new this morning, the Biden administration saying that it will forgive $7.7 billion in additional student loans for more than 160,000 borrowers. These include borrowers in the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program and some of those enrolled in the income-driven repayment plans. This announcement brings the total to 4.75 million borrowers who have had or will have loans forgiven by the administration. That adds up to $167 billion in aid. If you're looking at what this means, I think it's something like 1 in 10 Americans who owe student loans have been forgiven at this point.
Yeah, the administration keeps kind of searching for these existing programs where more borrowers qualify.
Because they've gotten smacked down with some of their other.
Exactly, the across-the-board comprehensive.
They're trying to do it around the edges any way they can, probably not a surprise in an election year.
Exactly, no.
Separately, the Biden administration is going to be releasing 1 million barrels of gasoline from reserves held in the Northeast to try and reduce prices at the pump ahead of the 4th of July and the summer driving season. Gasoline futures were up 19% year to date before that announcement, although gas prices at the pump had already eased in recent weeks as oil pulled back from its April highs. The national average as of this morning is $3.61. That's down 6 cents from a month ago, just according to AAA. Former President Trump criticized that move as a political stunt, saying high gasoline prices are not good for elections.
He's unable to drill properly, so he's destroyed everything we had. We were energy independent. We were shortly going to be energy dominant.
Well, this was a mandated by Congress release. So they're shutting down this reserve that was set up after Superstorm Sandy. It's 1 million barrels. We burn 9 million a day or something in this. I mean, it's not the timing. The timing certainly probably at the discretion of the administration. But anyway.
Shares of Urban Outfitters, they are higher earnings and revenue beating estimates lifted by high-end women's clothing chains, the chain Anthropologie and Free People. Gains there outweighed a bigger than expected drop in the namesake Urban Outfitters stores. Now, the company's CEO is saying the trend that replaced skinny jeans, smaller tops over looser fitting bottoms, it's nearing its peak as well, apparently, marking a rapid shift in consumer taste. So I don't know about you, Mike or Becky.
No, it's not for you guys.
Jeans?
This is for women, and I've seen it because we have daughters who are wearing this. Yeah, I know exactly the trend. Big balloony pants.
Which itself was a throwback to some sort of 90s looks, I guess, early 90s.
Yeah,
maybe.
it's almost like
it's happening to men
pants,
too, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I'd
but
like to see you guys.
You haven't noticed? Men are wearing these broader pants, almost with like the boot cut situation. It's coming back. I think.
No. This is like way more exaggerated. This is almost MC Hammer type, like baggy pants. Not like gradual things that are real subtle. This is a very balloony pants sort of and crop top to show it off.
Well, Andrew,
a look I could pull off.
I mean, that's Urban Outfitters. You're in Paris. You're going to come back telling us what the actual next look is. So.
We're watching crypto prices as Ethereum continues to rise on optimism that regulators could soon approve a spot ETF. The first of a series of decisions on the crypto instruments by the SEC are due tomorrow and Friday. The previous consensus was that they would not be approved, but you have seen the big jump as that consensus changed. 3,742, that's the last tick for Ethereum. Bitcoin actually pulled back slightly after a surge to start the week. Right now it's trading above $70,000, $70,094. In other crypto news, the Trump campaign announced yesterday that it will start accepting crypto donations. The campaign said that donors can use any cryptocurrency accepted through the Coinbase Commerce product. It's the latest effort by the Trump campaign to try and court that crypto community.
Meantime, Becky, this story making waves on Wall Street. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. now courting the Reddit apes, the third-party candidate and challenger, saying he has invested $24,000 in GameStop in an effort, he says, to show solidarity with retail investors over large institutional funds. He posted this image on X and said his administration would support the, quote, ape retail rebellion and enact aggressive Wall Street reforms. He said, quote, let's punish predatory short selling to the moon. By the way, I ride with you and I'm not leaving, unquote. I'm so curious what you guys think of this. I have to say, look, maybe there's a lot of problems with naked shorting and all sorts of other things, but I fear that this is almost irresponsible in some way because it's just, going to be promoting folks to go out and buy a stock that, as we've talked about, if it's a long-term investment at least, I mean, maybe from a trading perspective you can think about it differently, but from a long-term investment, the numbers just don't add up.
No, we kind of sort of settled this 3 years ago. I mean, there was this big current of, social outrage that was misplaced, thinking that there was some kind of conspiracy there. I mean, I think what you give RFK Jr.'s campaign credit for is just identifying these hives of belief that are out there in social media and trying to tap into them, whether they're based on fact or not. And that's kind of what this seems like to me. GameStop shares actually down 4% yesterday, so it didn't really do much to reignite that trade.
But he's looking for voters, not for people to come into the trade with him. And look, this morning, all we've talked about are each of these candidates doing things to try and win elections. You've got Biden trying to buy in voters by saying that he's going to forgive all the student loans. You've got Trump courting crypto advocates of any of these things. Everybody's looking for pockets of voters. That's what we're talking about. It's a crazy election season.
No, and that's true. But I think this is maybe one of the first times we've seen the stock market, the idea of investing in certain stocks, including Truth Social and now potentially GameStop, as a way of either demonstrating some kind of support for, or in the case of Truth Social, potentially even funneling money to a candidate. And that is a very unusual and new thing in the stock market and in politics, it seems like.
Tease will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, President Biden and former President Trump debate in late June. But pollster Frank Luntz warns they agreed before they knew the terms, and that's risky.
I think it's weird that they would agree, that either of them would agree to a debate before the rules are set.
And that's what I think could happen, that one of the candidates will say, I'm not doing it that way, because those rules determine who wins and who loses.
What voters will be gauging in this head-to-head, and what's at stake for each candidate, right after this. Welcome back to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Here's Becky Quick with Mike Santoli.
Stand Becky by.
President Biden and former President Trump meet for their first presidential debate in just over a month. For a look at the state of the 2024 presidential race and the fight for a reset of conservative economic policy, we want to bring in Frank Luntz, FIL Inc. pollster and political strategist. And Frank, thanks for coming in today.
You know what I love about this is that no one's talking about the rules. For example, are you standing or seated?
Oh, for the debates.
Yes. If you're standing, that will help Trump. That's who he is. That's how he performs. Seated is an advantage for Joe Biden. Are you going to allow a 90-second response, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Because that requires substance. That's Biden's advantage. Trump wants it as short as it can be, because then his sound bites do the best. We already know that there won't be anyone in the audience itself, so there'll be no cheering, no applause. But how you shut the microphone off if Trump tries to speak over Biden, or how you have that interchange, really does matter in who wins and who loses. And I'm surprised because I don't think, even though we're all planning for June 27th, I actually don't think that it's necessarily going to happen.
I think it's weird that they would agree, that either of them would agree to a debate before the rules are set.
And that's what I think could happen, that one of the candidates will say, I'm not doing it that way, because those rules determine who wins and who loses.
So if the debate is called off from one candidate over the other, does that hurt the candidate who says, I won't do this? Does it make them look like they're afraid?
Well, make no mistake, the public really doesn't want all this politics, but they do want to see these two people go at each other. And in the end, there's only 7 states that matter. In the end, there's only 4% of Americans that are undecided. So you're going to have these titans ripping each other apart for 1% of America.
How does RFK, the person who won't be on the stage, potentially change that? How does that shake up the calculus?
By taking photographs with owls and with apes, and by doing what he's doing right now. In the end, he's got an intriguing message. It's not mainstream, but it can appeal to those fringe elements. But he needs that 15% to get into the debates, and I don't think he's going to get there.
He needs the 15% to get into the base, but he does not need that to change the outcome of the election in some of these swing states, potentially.
That's correct. And in fact, we saw that Ralph Nader got 1% of the vote in 2000, and he changed Florida. all it takes for RFK is to get 3 or 4% of the vote. I believe in the end he will pull more from Biden than he will from Trump because of his VP nominee and because of his populist message. That can be the difference. And I'm also watching young African-American men in states like Georgia, North Carolina, the Latino vote in states like Arizona and Nevada, and the union vote in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin, because these blocks are going to decide who wins and who loses. And they are absolutely shifting right now. Trump's weakness is middle-aged, middle-income, suburban women who really don't want to see him back. And so you've got that balance going on right now.
Interesting that you mentioned the union vote, because both of these candidates are vying for the union vote. This is a different sort of race than we've seen in the past. Biden has said that he is the most pro-union president ever. But former President Trump has also been pretty vociferous about supporting many of these union calls that they've had. He showed up on the picket lines, too, in Michigan.
Well, you raised the most fascinating point. The union leadership is lined up, almost all of them, behind Joe Biden. But the rank and file, half of them, I should say a plurality, are backing Trump right now. We've never had this conflict where the leadership is one way and the followership is the other.
On what basis are the 1% of undecideds who might be persuadable going to make that decision? Is it a decision whether to vote or not? Or what would they be looking for in a debate or in any of these messages about the economy or anything else?
Well, make no mistake, they don't like either candidate. So for them, it's the lesser of two evils. Second is the economy matters most to them, which is affordability, not inflation. Can they afford health care? Can they afford housing, which is a big issue, food and fuel? And third is immigration, which is a greater sense of stability, security. Do I have to be nervous when I'm walking on the streets here in New York City? They'll be voting on which candidate they think will improve their quality of life, not necessarily their standard of living. And you really can't call it right now.
Which candidate polls better when it comes to those areas?
Trump does better on affordability and immigration. Joe Biden does better on abortion and the social issues. So it's whatever we're talking about on this show in that last week could well determine who wins.
If you had to make a guess right now, what would it be? What would your prediction be if the election were today?
Trump has the advantage. Look, he's been in trial now for weeks. We don't know what the result is going to be. I'm thinking it could even be a hung jury, in which case Trump is acquitted. If that's the case, he's going to scream out persecution, witch hunt, all of that, and it gives some merit to that case. But in the end, I don't think it's going to be about Trump or Biden. I think it's going to be about that voter themselves and which one they want to look at in their living rooms for the next 4 years. And frankly, it's neither of them.
But then the debate really does matter.
Absolutely.
To get a preview of what that might be.
This will be the most important debate. I know people say this all the time. Well, I actually mean it this time. This is going to be the most important debate. Everyone's going to be watching, even people who don't care about politics. I'm trying to figure out, I probably shouldn't say this on air, what's the best drinking game? I want to figure out which word Biden, it's not a hyperbola. Biden will do hyperbola and Trump will say witch hunt. And we'll see whichever one does the most that you have to drink some sort of alcoholic beverage. Everyone is going to be paying attention to every single word.
I hope this debate happens. I hope we do see it. I hope you're...
Otherwise, it's like Musk, Zuckerberg, we thought they were going to fight and they called it off.
And I've been on both sides, so I lost both ways. So that's my record. It really does matter because we've never had a situation where the candidates differ more greatly on more issues than this one.
Frank Luntz. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Up next, oldies but goodies. Auto reporter Phil LeBeau has the scoop on America's cars. They aren't getting any younger. And an entrepreneur who just can't quit digital news. Squawk Pod will be right back. You're listening to Squawk Pod.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue, please.
You are watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Becky Quick along with Mike Santoli at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. Andrew Ross Sorkin is in Paris at the Viva Tech conference. The average age of vehicles in the United States reaching an all-time high. Phil LeBeau joins us with more right now. Hey, Phil, what's the story?
This is a snapshot of the American vehicles that are out on the road right now. And you're seeing that vehicles are now at an all-time high in terms of the average age, 12.6 years, according to S&P Global Mobility. And again, they've never been higher than this. Three things are driving this. First of all, the reliability of vehicles built after 2000. It's not uncommon now to see a 2011, let's say, RAV4 that's out on the road and still running very well. You've also got new vehicle prices close to a record high, add in high financing costs, high insurance costs, and a lot of people are saying, you know what, I'm good with what I'm driving right now. And there's also slow EV adoption has many potential buyers in a wait-and-see mode. There are many people who say, I'd like to go electric at some point, not entirely comfortable with that at this point. Here's a breakdown of the average ages and these three buckets here. The thing to focus on here, 6 to 15 is the sweet spot for do-it-yourself repair, if you will, or keeping that vehicle going on the road and going to an auto parts retailer. I mention that because if you take a look at shares of O'Reilly, AutoZone, Advance Auto Parts over the last year, yes, they're off of their 52-week highs. But if you go back even further, these stocks have been off to the races. And one last stat for you guys that will make you say, not surprised. Pre-2000 models in the U.S., there are 24 million. That is almost 9% of all the vehicles registered in the U.S. Almost 9% were built before 2000. Gives you a sense of how long people are keeping their vehicles.
There are so many things that I'm thinking about. I remember when we first started seeing that big increase in age of cars on the road. It was around the financial crisis in 2008. We had all of these conversations about how people couldn't afford to buy a new car. You couldn't get financing from any of the companies at that point, so they were holding cars for longer and longer. Reliability is an important fact, but also just the price. I mean, the price that you're buying.
I think price is a huge part of it, Becky.
It's a huge, huge part of it. I mean, it's not like buying a house, but it's almost like taking out a mortgage to try and purchase some of these new cars. And they do a lot more than they ever did before. It's all pretty cool. What do automakers
Becky,
think about that?
Your average monthly payment for a new vehicle right now, Becky, is north of $700.
Wow.
Average. And for a lot of people, they're looking around saying, whoa, that's almost like the rent of a small apartment, I don't know, 30 years ago. And yes, I know I'm probably dating myself, and people are saying, well, apartments don't go for $700 now. There are lots of parts of this country where $700 is flat out ridiculous to people who are looking to buy a vehicle. And that's why they decide they're going to hang on to their current model, or they'll look for another used model and see if they can keep it going longer.
Is this the same thing as outstripping inflation, just like college costs outstrip inflation? New prices do, like even if you can factor in inflation?
Hard to tell. I mean, a big part of what drove the vehicle prices higher was the chip crisis. So that when chips were available, the automakers did what automakers should do. They're trying to make the most profit per vehicle. And they were building the highest trim models, generally speaking. They were not building the lowest trim models and saying, hey, why don't you buy this vehicle here for $39,000 when we can sell you a different vehicle because of limited supply for $54,000. And that's good business if you're an automaker. But if you're in the market looking for a vehicle, you're going, well, wait a second, I don't want the high trim. I want the lower trim. And that's why you're starting to see prices come back a little bit, but not really a whole lot.
Phil, thank you.
You bet.
Live from Paris this morning at Viva Tech. We have a tech/media story to bring you back home, though. Former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy has now taken a 7.7% stake in Buzzfeed. This is according to a new regulatory filing. You can take a look at the stock right there. Ramaswamy saying the digital media company was undervalued and is seeking a meeting with the company's board, according to Bloomberg. Buzzfeed surging on that news. We should note that the company's market cap is below $500 million. It's actually about $100 million at this point of the ballgame. Once worth about $1.7 billion at the high. There were a number of big investors at one point, including the parent company of this network, NBC Universal. What Vivek Ramaswamy wants to do with Buzzfeed, we don't now know yet. but an interesting move by somebody who has clearly made waves in the media and potentially wants to use BuzzFeed in a similar way that so many other folks, including the former president, President Trump, has taken Truth Social. So we will see the future of BuzzFeed, but a lot of folks buzzing this morning in tech and media lands about this story.
We will see what happens after the bell today, and we will see you back here tomorrow. Make sure you join us.
And that's the podcast for today. Thanks for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin, wherever we are in the world. But you can tune in on TV weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern, or anytime, get the best of our TV show right in your ears when you follow Squawk Pod. That's it. We'll meet you back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.